So just like every other series or playlist I've done, it starts out with a little bit of theory so you understand what you're getting yourself into here. So theory. First of all, there are a lot of ways to do a satellite shader, and this is something I developed. It's a little bit, I think, different than most people do. Um, One way to do this is to use your original satellite image, and you can do some stamping and some brushing, and you can manipulate that image into a satellite overlay. And there are some videos that DPR did. There's a video that TechBud did that show you how to do that. Um, if you have a nice, good-looking satellite overlay that can work really well, I find it's a little bit tedious. I like to work more methodically. I don't think it's any slower or faster based on what I do. It's just different. And some people, and a lot of people actually have really good luck with it. I completely fabricate my satellite overlays. And what I do is I use the satellite image as just a color basis. So in theory, you can use any satellite image with what I'm going to do. So if you have a satellite image that you found, and you really like the colors associated with it, you can use that. In my case, though, my satellite images, I've been using those, and I've been using the colors on that because I want something that matches the course. So that goes back to your Google and your Bing overlays, and some people have even worked with Apple ones before to get those colors. I think I touched on this before, but Photoshop versus GIMP. When I first started out, I tried to use GIMP. I had no luck whatsoever. Once my file got big, it just crashed a lot and I gave up. It wasn't until I started using Photoshop that I was very successful with satellite overlays. There are two main steps when you create your satellite overlays. Um, you are going to create or manipulate your satellite image, okay? And then you're going to manipulate your Unity satellite shader to apply your meshes, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to either use the stamping and brushing technique, which I don't cover. Those are covered in other videos, and I'll post those. Or you're going to fabricate it, okay? That's step number one. And then you're going to take that image, you're going to pull it into Unity, and you're going to apply that shader I'm sorry, you're going to apply that overlay to the satellite shader, and then you're going to manipulate all the colors, the blending, and then you're going to apply it to your meshes. Hopefully I'm going to do a good job of showing how there's a lot of things to consider when you're doing that. My technique is covered in detail in this series. If you're interested in the stamping and brushing, there'll be other videos posted for those as well. They're a little bit older, but they work just as well. Those are covered in the DPR and TechPud videos that will be in a separate playlist inside of YouTube. So let's talk about creating and manipulating the satellite overlay itself, what you're going to be using inside of Unity, okay? I like to use a lot of layers and a lot of groups. So what I do is I create a layer and then I put it inside of a group for organization and manipulation. Okay, that'll make much more sense once we get into things. But the groups or the things that I typically use and the order I create them are, first of all, I bring in my satellite imagery. And remember, it doesn't have to be the one for your course because it's just going to be used for color. So you're going to import your satellite imagery. And you can bring in more than one. You can bring as many as you want. That's kind of like the base, the first thing I bring in. Then what I do is I create things that I dub, no one else knows this term. This is the first time I've explained this to anybody. So if you say GFR in Discord, people other than me, people might not understand what you're talking about. But they're like color palettes. Your greens, your fairways, and your roughs, I call them color palettes. You're going to create a color palette for what you want your greens to look like. You're going to create a color palette for what you want your fairways to look like, your roughs, and there might be other things. And when the example I show you, I create a color palette for this rocky area that I'm using. But I call those color palettes GFRs. Stands for greens, fairways, and roughs. It's the best I could come up with. Maybe there's a better term, but that's what I call them, GFRs. So those are just colors that you create inside of Photoshop. Then I bring in my Inkscape shapes, okay? So the things that you did in Inkscape, I bring them in one by one. So I'll bring my fairways in. I'll bring my roughs in, my semis, my tees, my bunkers, my cart paths. I bring all those in because I use those as kind of outlines for drawing and manipulating those color palettes, those GFRs. All right, and you're going to see how I do that as well. So at that point, I should be able to have a rough satellite overlay and I can import it into Unity, but there's some other things that you might want to do in your satellite overlay as well, which is mow lines, okay? There's two different types of mow lines I'm going to show you how to create. There's concentric mow lines, which are circular and wavy, that go around an Inkscape object, and then there's parallel mow lines that are like the stripes, okay? So I'll show you those. And then you're going to create separate overlays for if you want to do bunker shading, and also if you want to do your cart path shading. And I'll show you how to do those as well. But this is kind of the general way that we're going to tackle this.